The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to suspend Standing Order 256 relating to omnibus bills to allow the Committee of the Whole House on the Education Amendment Bill number 2 to consider an amendment in my name that proposes amendments to the Health and Safety in Employment Act 1992.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? There is no objection. I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Education Amendment Bill number 2.
Mr Speaker.
Mr Chairman.
Members, the House is in committee on the Education Amendment Bill number 2. Bill. Question is a Part 1 stand part.
Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Chairman, I'm pleased that we've finally got to this legislation, and I think it's fair to say that it won't take quite as long as it might have previously. Mr Chairman, I think there will be an interesting debate when we get to to Part 1A, which is a debate after Part 1. But that does leave us, Mr Chairman, with a number of areas where the Labor Party disagrees very firmly with the National Party. I think the first one I'd like to focus on is the question of whether or not entry to a state school should be a hereditary right or not. Whether in the end someone whose parents or even grandparents went to a school should have a right to enter that school over and above someone who lives close to the school and would otherwise be in the zone. It's the view of the Labor Party, the very firm view of the Labor Party that in New Zealand state schools should not be subject to entitlement rights. People should not be able to pass down, generally from father to son, because it's more often that way than from mother to daughter. Just about always in single-sex schools, but not only the right to attend particular schools. I know that the National Party are sort of firmly in favour of hereditary rights, but generally that's not the case in New Zealand, and for that reason we have amendments which focus on that question. There are also some amendments which are sitting on the table which focus on the question of private schools and their disciplinary procedures. The Law Commission did a very, very thorough review of the law as it relates to independent schools and made a series of recommendations. And to give the government credit, they picked up a few of them, but actually didn't pick up some of the more important ones and were totally unable to tell the committee, the select committee, and I'm not blaming officials in this area, it's not their job to defend government policy, but we were looking for reasons why some of the suggestions of the Law Commission after their well-researched project were not picked up. And because we didn't have a good explanation for that, we have in fact picked up two of their recommendations ourselves. And one is a pretty simple one, and that is to have the private schools' disciplinary procedures to be available on request, provided to students and their parents when the students are facing suspension, exclusion or expulsion. And it seems to me to be a pretty reasonable thing. We're not saying that they have to be printed. You know, they could be on a website and people could take it from that. They could be in a booklet. But we think that if people are to have, if there's to be a just approach to discipline within the private school system, having a system which records what those processes are and making it available to the students is, as the Law Commission recommended, a pretty reasonable thing to do, and we cannot see why a government would not want to do that. In a similar vein, the Law Commission said that there should be some basic procedural requirements that schools should adhere to. Where a student has been suspended, the parents should have the right to request that the suspension be lifted or varied, or to make submissions in support of the request, that there should be adequate notice of the proposed exclusion or expulsion to both the student and his or her parents, and there should be a reasonable opportunity for the parents to attend a meeting. Now, again, I think anyone who has any sense of natural justice would say none of that should be a problem. That should be pretty much automatic. And I don't want to, in any way portray the Labor Party as a defender of independent schools, but most of them have processes which are very good, and very, very few of them would have a problem with this. But the issue, as the Law Commission makes clear, is there are a few schools, some of them traditional and some I might describe as weird and wonderful independent schools, which don't have processes which work in an appropriate manner. And for that reason, I see no reason why they shouldn't have them. The next area, Mr. Chairman.
Call the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
The next area I would like to focus on is the question of the disciplinary processes for teachers to do with the Teachers' Council. I want to thank the Minister for inviting me to her office, giving me a group of areas where she was proposing to bring a late SOP into the Select Committee. I made it clear that, and I think members of the Select Committee will agree, in fact, I'll probably end up promoting the SOP that she sent to the committee within the committee, because I've got no doubt that the disciplinary procedures for the Teachers' Council are dated and do not work effectively. Now, I do want to acknowledge, and I'll probably warn Ms Toure that Catherine Delahunty was not happy with the process, and I agree with her. It was not good process. We did get in both the unions and the Teachers' Council and the School Trustees Association. None of us thought it was good progress, but then again, none of us thought it would be worth waiting, or we should wait another couple of years till a similar bill came down the track and left the gap there. So that was a call. Although I must say, and I feel just slightly surprised at this, I have read recently that there is a plan for another education amendment bill, mainly dealing with tertiary matters, from the Minister of Tertiary Education, and it seems to me that it might have been, it's too late now for this particular part of it, but it might have been better process if in fact it had been associated with that piece of legislation, because as we're learning, the Education Amendment Bill, when they occur, can be very broad, and it would have been better for it to be used in. That's not the case. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, there was, Mr. Chairman, there was one area that the Minister and I talked about, and we thought we were going to progress, but after she got further advice, she chose not to move on. And for me, it was probably the most important issue that sat there, and that was the fact that so often, when cases are before the disciplinary tribunal, there is a reflection across quite a big group of teachers because of the very poor suppression arrangements that are there in the rules of the Teachers' Council. And there's been some work done, some very good work done, I think, by Simon Power on the suppression issue. And what I have done is I have picked up and have an SOP in my name, which puts in new clauses 12DA and 12DB, which effectively incorporate those principles into the processes, where you would move to an assumption of openness, but then have the committee closed and the ability to suppress names. I mean, no one wants kids who've been molested by teachers' names to be published. But at the moment, the Teachers' Council rules are basically all or nothing. It's either all open or all closed. They don't have an ability to be there. So there are two approaches. One, we can write the rules for them, and that is in the 12DA, 12DB amendments. The other alternative And the reason they say that they haven't changed the rules